Friends, thanks for all your questions, including the ones that have given them through via Skype. We have quite a few here, and we'll try to give short answers if possible from the panel. So there are a few questions on the historical part. A few on what the third volume is and how did it come about. Why did Annie Besant publish the discarded initial draft? And another question that also is on the same topic, where are they, or can they be found somewhere, the third and the fourth volume? Can something be repeated or maybe clarified on that part?
Yes. Well, to understand the history of the Theosophical movement, when we attempt to look into the history, we find that within just a couple of years after H.P. Blavatsky had passed away, discord and conflicts began in the original Theosophical Society. Annie Besant, who was a prominent figure and later became the president of the society, began to turn against and start criticizing, rejecting, depreciating and so on the work and the writings of HPB. She was joined in that by Colonel Alcott, A.P. Sinnott and others, mainly under the instigation of G.N. Chakravarti, who was a Hindu Orthodox Brahmin who gained a prominent place in the society. And so within just a few years it had been decided that now the Theosophical Society would teach something different, so the Besant version of Theosophy. And she wanted to get rid of and do away with anything left over from HPB. And so these leftover and discarded documents, half-finished articles and so on, she put together, published them in what was called the third volume. But almost immediately, other Theosophists who knew better began protesting, criticizing this, and pointing out that it was not what it claimed to be. And as for the original third and fourth volumes that HPB herself had written and spoken of, we can assume they must be somewhere, but whoever has them or whoever knows isn't saying. Although as late as 1895, 4 years after HPB had passed away, William Judge wrote an article in which he mentioned certain things as being in the manuscript of the third volume. So some Theosophists have the idea that perhaps when William Judge went from America to London after HPB's death to help sort things out, perhaps he had taken away the third and fourth volume manuscripts for safekeeping. But that's only a hypothesis. We don't really know.
Maybe add that, well, I think in the view of well, some of the students here, it's probably not recommended to, well, it's down to everyone's own individual choice whether they want or not to go and have a look at that and make their own mind, their own opinion. But we don't recommend studying that, obviously, because well, there is enough in these volumes that we have here, the first and second volume. There is enough for lifetimes of study and work and assimilation, and the reason why we haven't got the third and fourth volume is because we're not ready for it. So maybe we should focus on trying to assimilate what we already have, and just be patient, because when the time will be ripe, more will come.
It's also said that there's no way of knowing in that so-called third volume how much of it has been tampered with or altered with or edited by Annie Besant. Because a few years previously she'd published volumes 1 and 2 in a so-called revised edition, which was found to have at least 20,000 alterations from the original. Most of them were minor alterations of grammar, spelling, punctuation, but there were also entire deletion of paragraphs and additions and so on. So it's better to stick with what we know to actually have been written by HPB in the form it was written.
Another question from a person on Skype. Which book is best to begin studying HPB? This person says that he or she started reading Isis Unbuilt, and the question is, shall I switch over to the secret doctrine?
Well, different people, when they encounter Theosophy, are at differing levels of experience of how much of these types of concepts or principles they may have already read. So we can't really say there's one definite book which everyone should read to begin with. Some people find it easier and more useful to begin with books of William Judge, who was HPB's co-founder. We sometimes recommend to people The Ocean of Theosophy by William Judge, or his small booklets Echoes from the Orient and An Epitome of Theosophy. Others find they can get on well by starting with The Key to Theosophy by HPB. I've never personally heard of anyone suggesting starting with Isis Unveiled or The Secret Doctrine, because they're both very extensive, complex books. It's better perhaps to start with something simpler and more explanatory, like The Key to Theosophy or William Judge's ones, and then go on to the others.
Maybe we can say also that the Secret Doctrine isn't necessarily one for reading from back to front to back in one continuous flow, but it's more one where you can study and reflect on parts and study themes and look up references on a particular theme in different places in the book and approach it this way, rather than like any other book that you would read from the first page right down to the last. So different ways of approaching it.
Another question, thank you. How can one apply the theoretical metaphysics of the secret doctrine in order to experience the hidden laws of nature in our own lives? How can, would you like us to repeat?
Yeah, maybe just to...
How can one apply the theoretical, within quotation mark, metaphysics, so theoretical metaphysics of the secret doctrine in order to experience the hidden laws of nature in our own lives?
So, yes, that's a very good question. And I guess it's down to everyone to find the own answer that's and make their own experiences and test it. But obviously, by reading things like the fundamentals, which we heard in the second talk, you can think of implications it might have on the way you see life, certain beliefs that one might have, certain habits that we have had in the past from our birth and our childhood that we've sort of subconsciously taken because others have taken them on. All of these we have to start the work of the work of real philosophy, which is questioning everything, all of our beliefs and all of our habits and thoughts, and asking ourselves whether they're consistent and coherent with what we've understood about life, and what we now know about the truths about the laws of nature, about the laws of our own being, and are we aligned, and try and gradually sort of make changes in our own lives, and see whether we can see these. If, for example, the law of cycles, is it that universal? Is it really? And we have to try and internalize some of these, and these are just a few elements, but maybe there are some complementary.
No, not sufficient.
Okay, here's another interesting question from a friend on through Skype. the secret doctrine is about the formation and evolution of the universe and human races. So it can be considered a book quite historic in a sense. But if we hear about chakras in the teaching of yoga, which can we consider more anatomical or psychological? As far as I know, HPB doesn't speak so much of chakras. Why is it so? Is this right? Is it right to say this? And why is it so?
Is it right to say what?
Am I right? What the person has just said, that we're speaking of the anthropogenesis, the formation of the universe, human races, and so it's more like a description of the human races and more historical. And if we look about other teachings, then we see that there is a lot on teachings of yoga on chakras, about the anatomy of man and his psychological nature. And HPB doesn't speak about chakras, and why is it so? Is it, am I right, asks the questioner, and why is it so?
Well, there's the emphasis on chakras in popular modern day spirituality, which is chiefly in the New Age movement, is entirely misplaced. The New Age view is they promulgate the idea that chakras are so important and that all Eastern spirituality and ancient Hinduism and Buddhism place such a great emphasis on chakras, but they don't. One can read the key main scriptures of Hinduism, for example, for a whole lifetime. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Puranas never find any mention of or emphasis on chakras. In Hinduism and Buddhism, chakras are part of the tantric teachings of those two religions. Now, that's not to say that chakras don't exist. Theosophy doesn't deny the chakras, but it denies that they're of tremendous importance or value, or that we need to be focusing on them or doing something with them. But Theosophy is practical in talking about our mental nature, the soul, and so on, which are far more the real part of our being than these chakras. I don't know if that helps to answer it.
Yes?
Maybe there's a reason, it's quite maybe an esoteric part of the teachings as well, and what's been given in the ESD and in the rest of the teachings, it's only that part that is allowed at that time, given the wisdom or lack of wisdom of our current race. So there's probably a reason why it's not mentioned so much in the teachings.
Yes, the fact of the purity of the inner nature, and also the impact of occultism. There are articles under in the book called Raja Yoga and Occultism, or even conversations on occultism, where HPB, Judge, and other teachers emphasize on the dangers and impacts that could be unwillingly, could we say, activated through the concentration on chakras, etc., if one's nature is not pure and one's motivations are not pure. But
we should perhaps also briefly mention that the term yoga is a very generic term. It literally means union with the divine. But there are many forms of yoga, and what people commonly think of nowadays in the West when they hear the word yoga is physical stretching, postures, positions, maybe sitting in meditation and trying to control the breath or awaken Kundalini. The secret doctrine itself actually speaks of that as the lowest form of yoga. Hatha yoga is the lower yoga. There's Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, Karma yoga, Bhakti yoga. These are the things the Bhagavad Gita and ancient Eastern philosophy deals with the most and promotes, not the physical side, which, as was said, is we're encouraged to leave well alone.
Thank you. Here's a question, probably following the the introductory talk, the introduction, was the mighty power or art part of the human nature in the past? How was it lost? Maybe it will be spoken of in the fourth talk, but it's, if there's some quick ideas.
I think we can. It was said in the introduction that it was impressed on the mind at the start of the cycle, and it still is present in somewhere in our inner being, but we somehow have lost the ability to consciously access this knowledge. And part of the teaching of Theosophy is this whole work of reminding us of this, the immortal nature of the soul, the existence of the Atma, of the Self, and the work we have to do to discipline our lower nature and purify our desires so as to let the light and the knowledge and the wisdom of that higher part of us shine through our waking consciousness. So that's part of the work we have to do in our daily lives.
Maybe time for just one question,
Yes,
with a quick.
You just mentioned the word shine through, yes? Now, and you mentioned how you can get higher up the scale on a spiritual portion. But the way to shine is like, you shine a light. If there's darkness, you can't see. You don't know where it's going. You shine a light and it shows you the path. So you're safe, I believe personally that one of the ways to follow the path is of truth. Because truth is like a torch or a bulb or a light. Follow the path, it gives you the wisdom and it shows you the way. So for me, that's one of the ways that you can shine that light to know where
What
you're
is
going,
the question?
and you can go ahead and make more progress.
Thank you. The idea of truth is in fact important, and then it comes, of course, boils down to what is the definition of truth, how do we see it, but as a very inspirational idea, it's the truth is sat, and from that point of view, probably we all agree. So maybe we have to move over to, yes?
The question on the language of the secret doctrine, it was mentioned the almost deliberate, difficult and convoluted language it was written in, and as compared to the Isis Unveiled and even certainly the writings of Judge. Why was that deliberate? Why was it not made easier to understand, for example, simpler language, perhaps clearer language, more direct language?
A quick
answer. Okay. HPB says in the introduction to the Secret Doctrine, this work is written for the benefit of students of occultism. So although it's publicly available for anyone to read, she says there and later, it's not written for the general public, this book specifically. It's for those who are serious about studying esoteric philosophy and developing themselves on the esoteric level. And so, as B.P. Wadia explains in Studies in the Secret Doctrine, this is a book written so that those who study it have to apply a deeper, higher level of the mind and thinking, and really put their mind and intellect to work in such a way that eventually the manas, or mind, merges with the buddhi, or the intuitive, or faculty of intuition. And through really focusing, trying to work out, trying to understand what's being said, pulling together the different facts and statements for ourselves, and assembling it and doing that effort, then we gain real knowledge. Nowadays it's very popular for esoteric books to have long lists, easy diagrams, where people just read and memorize what they read. But that isn't real knowledge, that's memorization or belief. The aim of the secret doctrine in HPB is to make us learn and discover for ourselves what the teachings are.
Thank you. We have questions left, but probably these will be covered through the other thoughts, and we'll be able to come back to these questions if necessary with the other panel.